A millionaire CEO finds his secretary in the wrong bathroom and falls in love immediately. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The golden lights of the city's skyline sparkled through the expansive windows of the 28th floor. Up there, in his luxurious corner office, Adrian H. Lockhart, a renowned millionaire CEO, ran his empire with the calm authority of someone who had never tasted defeat. He was tall, with neatly styled dark hair and an enigmatic gaze that turned heads during board meetings, galas, and even casual strolls through the heart of downtown. For most people, the idea of failing was an ever-present ghost. For Adrian, it was just an abstract concept he had yet to encounter. That evening, the final hum of the air conditioning whispered across the marble floors while the cleaning staff finished vacuuming. Adrian massaged the knots in his temples, mentally reviewing the next day's negotiations with an important investor. The clock on the wall chimed softly at 8:00 p.m. He should have left hours ago, but pushing himself to the limit was part of his DNA. Deals this massive, projects that would impact entire industries. He thrived on the adrenaline that came with high-stakes challenges. Outside his office, the entire floor was empty except for the nighttime crew mopping distant corridors. Adrian stretched his legs, deciding to take a short walk around the building's executive wing. Even a figure like him, confident, revered, needed a moment to breathe. The stress of an upcoming merger weighed heavy, and he sensed that stepping away from the desk, if only for a few minutes, could provide fresh clarity. As he navigated through the quiet hallway, he spotted a silhouette moving hurriedly around the corner. The figure paused, uncertain, then darted back. Strange, he thought. Usually no one else but the janitors stayed this late. A beep from one of the cleaning carts came from behind him, but he kept his attention on the faint footsteps. His curiosity piqued, he quickened his stride. His polished Italian loafers made almost no sound on the glossy floor, yet he could still hear the anxious patter of someone else's shoes. He followed the footsteps, rounding the same corner and arriving at a section of the hallway that led to the restrooms. A sign indicated men on the left, women on the right. But the footsteps seemed to have headed directly and somewhat hastily into the men's room. He paused in front of the door, a part of him questioning whether it was wise to intrude. Another part, driven by a sense of chivalry, was concerned that someone, possibly a newcomer or visitor, might have made a mistake. Or maybe it was just an employee in a rush who ended up in the wrong place. He pushed the door open slightly, clearing his throat. "Hello? Is everything all right?" he called softly. There was a muffled yelp from inside. Adrian stepped in, scanning the modern, sleek interior of the restroom. The stalls, fitted with polished steel doors, were mostly closed. The overhead lighting cast a flattering glow, but it couldn't hide the tension in the air. He waited, uncertain, until the middle stall door swung open just a fraction. A young woman emerged, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. She wore a classic pencil skirt, slightly rumpled now, and clutched her small handbag so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Her dark hair was pulled into a neat bun, although a few strands had come loose. Trembling, she realized the man staring at her was Adrian H. Lockhart himself, the famed CEO whose name was whispered in the halls of corporate power. I'm so sorry," she stammered, flustered. "I'm new. It was late, and I just followed the sign incorrectly. I didn't mean to—" Adrian raised a hand gently, trying to calm her. She was obviously mortified, and the moment had a bizarre comedic spark that he couldn't deny. In his life, he was used to seeing people quake in front of him, but always for business reasons, never because of a simple mix-up in the restroom. "There's no need to apologize," Adrian said, adopting a reassuring tone. "These signs can be confusing at times, especially when you're rushing." He offered a polite smile, stepping back to allow her through. Her name badge, half hidden under her blazer, read Emma Brooks. It clicked in his mind that she was the new secretary from a different floor. The HR department had sent out a company-wide notice about her joining the firm. He vaguely remembered the short email. Emma Brooks has joined as an executive secretary to assist with departmental tasks. He hadn't paid much attention at the time. Now the memory returned with striking clarity. Emma finally mustered the courage to meet his gaze. When their eyes locked, Adrian felt something shift in the air. For a fleeting instant, the hustle of acquisitions, the looming investor calls, and the entire race for success seemed to fade. Her eyes carried a gentle earnestness he hadn't encountered in years. "I'm truly sorry," she repeated, her voice a hushed tremor. "I was on my way out. The ladies' room on this floor was locked for cleaning, so I tried finding another one. I must have not read the sign properly." Adrian could see she was on the verge of panic. He reached for some humor to ease the tension. Well, as far as trespasses go, this might be the least serious. No harm done. He tried to sound warm, not at all like the imposing CEO whose empire made headlines. "Please don't worry about it. Accidents happen." Emma breathed a shaky sigh of relief. "Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. I really appreciate it. I'll be out of your way now." She ducked her head and dashed out. Adrian remained rooted for a second, listening to the echo of her rapid footsteps fade down the hallway. He stepped back into the corridor himself, feeling unusual. His life, typically a cascade of negotiations and board meetings, rarely included chance encounters like this. The entire situation was trivial, just a moment's confusion. But it lingered in his thoughts. Emma's deep brown eyes, the vulnerability in her voice, the slight flush on her cheeks, everything about her was etched in his mind, as though lit by a spotlight. When he returned to his office, he couldn't shake the sense that he needed to know more about Emma Brooks, if only to make sure she wasn't left humiliated or worried about her position. After all, his corporations thrived on synergy and a supportive culture. He prided himself on ensuring employees felt valued. Normally, he would pass a note to HR to handle such a small matter, but something compelled him to skip the formalities. "Ms. Santos," he called to his longtime personal assistant, who was still tidying up her workspace next door. "Tomorrow, please arrange a meeting with Emma Brooks. She's the new secretary who started last week. I'd like to personally welcome her to the company. Let's fit it into my schedule sometime around lunch." His assistant raised a curious eyebrow. "Certainly, Mr. Lockhart. May I ask if there's any particular reason?" Adrian paused, straightening the stray papers on his desk as if that final detail demanded his attention. "I'd just like to ensure we are properly integrating our new staff. Sometimes they feel adrift when they start. We're supposed to be a team." The explanation felt half true even to himself. But Ms. Santos did not press further. She made a quick note in her planner, discreetly hiding her bemusement. Early the next morning, Emma hurried into the building, scanning her phone for any messages or tasks she might have missed. Last night's run-in with Adrian Lockhart had kept her awake, her mind replaying every mortifying second. She was convinced she had jeopardized her reputation just days into the job. Her reflection in the polished elevator doors told the story of sleepless hours, faint circles under her eyes, an anxious pinch to her lips. Once at her desk, she discovered an appointment request from Ms. Santos. The subject read, "Introduction, meeting with Mr. Lockhart, noon." Emma felt her heart drop into her stomach. What if he's going to reprimand me, or terminate me for messing up on something as ridiculous as using the wrong bathroom? Anxiety buzzed as she tried to focus on her regular tasks, organizing departmental files, scheduling travel for a visiting executive, answering phone calls, but her attention kept drifting. She spilled coffee on her new keyboard cover, typed a co-worker's name incorrectly in an email, and had to redo half of a spreadsheet because she forgot to save it. Her cheeks burned the entire time, a reflection of her mental turmoil. When the clock hit 11:55 a.m., Emma approached the tall frosted glass doors that led to Adrian's domain on the top floor. Ms. Santos welcomed her with a warm nod. Go right in. He's expecting you." Emma smoothed her skirt and took a steadying breath. She stepped into the office where floor-to-ceiling windows framed a breathtaking view of the skyline. Adrian was seated behind a sleek oak desk, but he stood the moment she entered, greeting her with a polite smile. If she noticed it, she might have seen a spark of genuine delight in his eyes. He gestured to a comfortable seat in front of his desk. "Ms. Brooks," Adrian said, voice cordial, "thank you for taking the time to meet with me." She swallowed hard, her voice barely audible. "Of course, Mr. Lockhart. Thank you for inviting me." He waved a hand, dismissing the formalities. "Call me Adrian, please. We're colleagues, not adversaries. I wanted to make sure you're settling in. How's your first week going?" Emma's shoulders relaxed imperceptibly. "It's been good. A bit overwhelming. Everything is so fast-paced here, but I like it. I just hope I haven't caused too much trouble." Her words trailed off, but Adrian knew exactly what she was hinting at. He leaned forward, elbows on his desk, arms loosely crossed. "If you're referring to last night's restroom mix-up, don't give it another thought. In this building, we have bigger concerns than an innocent sign mistake." His eyes flickered with understanding. "It's nothing to worry about." She exhaled, relief visibly washing over her. I appreciate that, Adrian. Truly. I was worried it might reflect poorly on me or lead to some sort of write-up." He chuckled softly. "Believe me, we both have more pressing business matters to address. My goal is to ensure that talented individuals like you feel comfortable here so you can do your best work. That's it." The compliment caught Emma off guard. Talented? The word ricocheted in her mind. She'd spent the last day feeling incompetent. "Thank you. I'm glad to hear it. I promise I'm a hard worker. I'm just adjusting to the pace and the scale of everything." "Well," Adrian said, a hint of warmth tinging his professionally smooth voice, "if you ever need help, feel free to ask Ms. Santos or me. You'll find that I place high value on fostering a collaborative environment." He paused, letting his eyes linger on her for a second longer than standard corporate courtesy. "I'm sure you'll excel here." She offered a small, grateful smile. "I won't let you down." As the conversation veered to more routine topics, her future tasks, the open staff positions she might help fill, a quick mention of the upcoming shareholders' meeting, Adrian found himself consciously fighting the urge to slip into a more personal tone. He was known for being an impeccable professional, rarely giving more than polite smiles or strictly business encouragement. Yet, with Emma, he sensed a desire to go beyond the typical boss-employee script. Something about her sincerity drew him in. Eventually, Ms. Santos stepped in, signaling that Adrian's lunch appointment with a group of investors was about to begin. Emma quickly apologized, gathering her notes. "Of course, I'll let you get on with your meeting. Thank you for your time, Adrian." She emphasized his name softly, as though testing if it felt right on her tongue. He dipped his head in acknowledgement, feeling a stir in his chest that he couldn't quite identify. "I'm confident we'll speak again soon. Take care, Emma." She left, stepping past Ms. Santos, who nodded politely. Adrian watched her silhouette disappear into the hallway. Then he inhaled, bracing himself for the lunch with the investors. For once, though, the negotiations seemed a little less intimidating. A subtle wave of anticipation fluttered in his stomach, a sensation he wasn't used to in this environment. By the time the investors arrived, Adrian was his usual polished self, polite, composed, perfect handshake, perfect eye contact. But in the recesses of his mind, an image of Emma lingered. He kept recalling the wide-eyed look of relief on her face, the slightly shaky but determined tone of her voice, the way she radiated a genuine warmth in an office that so often felt mechanical and transactional. Across the building, Emma tried to focus on her next tasks, organizing resumes for new junior executives. But her heart kept dancing at the thought of Adrian's final words. This place might be a world of cutting-edge technology and multi-billion-dollar deals, but for her, it suddenly felt more welcoming, more human. She told herself it was just courtesy, the minimal kindness a CEO extends to a new employee. Yet, deep inside, she sensed something unspoken, a promising spark she couldn't name. Neither of them realized that this small spark, born from an accidental step into the wrong bathroom, would soon ignite something unstoppable. For all Adrian Lockhart's power and prestige, for all Emma Brooks's modest humility and newness to the corporate world, fate had quietly laid its plans, weaving the threads of their paths into one story. A story that would test loyalties, upend priorities, and challenge everything they thought they wanted from life. The meeting room buzzed with conversation as junior executives in crisp suits filed out one by one. Emma stood by the wide glass panel overlooking the city, notepad clutched against her chest. She'd been asked to take minutes during the department briefing, a high-level discussion that, until now, was rarely open to new employees. Yet here she was, her presence already indicating that someone up there, possibly Adrian Lockhart himself, wanted her involved more closely. She was still mulling over the new responsibilities when her friend and fellow secretary, Melanie, nudged her from behind. "Hey, Ms. Busy, you look like you were off daydreaming," Melanie teased. Emma managed a sheepish smile. "Guess I'm just trying to process everything. This place, it runs at its own speed." Melanie wiggled her eyebrows. "And certain CEOs run it at an even faster pace, am I right?" She sneaked a glance at Emma's expression. "They say Mr. Lockhart has been in an unusually good mood these last few days. Did you notice?" Emma's heart did a little flip, but she masked it with a dismissive shrug. "I wouldn't know. I've been buried in spreadsheets and appointments. Besides, it's not like I interact with him often." Melanie tilted her head, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "You'd be surprised. Word around the office is that he asked Ms. Santos about your background. He's never that interested in someone new, especially a junior staff member. You sure there isn't anything you're forgetting to tell me?" The memory of her mortifying mistake in the men's room flitted through Emma's mind, and heat rose in her cheeks. She opened her mouth to deflect, but a wave of embarrassment locked the words in her throat. "It's nothing," she finally managed. "Just a small blunder. If he did ask about me, he probably wanted to confirm I don't break HR protocols again." She laughed it off, but part of her was curious about Adrian's newfound interest. Melanie gave her a playful jab on the arm. "Don't be coy. Anyway, we're all heading to the cafe downstairs for a coffee run. You coming?" Emma glanced at the clock. Her next appointment was a research session on corporate compliance, a mandatory training. She sighed. "I'd love to, but I have a training in half an hour and I need to compile some documents first." Melanie pouted theatrically. "Fine. I'll bring you a cappuccino. I'll even ask them to make a cute foam heart on top, though that might be more symbolic than practical." Emma's face warmed again, but this time with fondness. "You're the best. Thank you." With that, Melanie bustled out, leaving Emma alone in the empty meeting room. Emma gathered her notes, and as she stacked them neatly, the glass door slid open. She looked up, expecting another colleague. Instead, she found herself face to face with Adrian Lockhart. "Excuse me," he said softly, stepping inside. The overhead lights framed him, highlighting the lines of his tailored gray suit. "I wasn't aware there was still someone in here." Emma straightened. "Oh, Mr. Lockhart. Adrian. I was just finishing up from the department briefing." She held up her notebook. "I'm about to head down to finalize the minutes." A small smile traced his lips. "Mind if I see what the discussion covered? I heard it was about our new marketing strategy for the upcoming quarter." For a moment, Emma tried to recall if anything confidential was mentioned. She found no reason to hesitate. "Sure, it's mostly public within the company. Let me just—" She flipped open the notepad to the relevant pages. He approached, standing close enough that she could catch a faint hint of his cologne, rich and subtle. As he scanned her notes, Emma caught herself hyper-aware of his presence. She could see a reflection of his face in the glossy surface of the table. His expression was thoughtful, eyes flicking from line to line. "Impressive detail," he remarked, looking up. "You summarized each point clearly. This is going to be useful for the entire department. Have you done minute-taking before?" She nodded. "I used to handle it at my previous job, though that was a much smaller firm. No multi-million-dollar marketing campaigns or national expansions there." He shut the notepad gently and returned it to her. "Well, you handle it well. I appreciate thoroughness, especially in these early stages. A single oversight can derail an entire strategy." Emma's posture relaxed. "Thank you. I'll clean them up and forward them." As she turned to leave, Adrian's next words stopped her. "Emma, how are you settling in? Truly, is everything manageable?" The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. It was a simple question, yet it carried a comforting warmth that made her feel less like a replaceable employee and more like a respected collaborator. She fiddled with the spiral of her notepad. "Honestly, it's been a whirlwind. Everyone's been helpful, but there's a lot to learn. Different departments, so many protocols. Even the building layout can be confusing. I still get lost sometimes." A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "I imagine the bathrooms have become a sore point." "Well," he paused as though reconsidering how to phrase his next thought. "If you need help with orientation, or if the workload ever feels overwhelming, come see me. My door is open." His eyes held hers for a second longer than expected. In that pause, Emma felt a swirl of emotion she couldn't fully name. Gratitude, yes, but also something more electric. She lowered her gaze. "I appreciate that, really." He stepped aside so she could exit first. "Take care of yourself. Don't stay too late unless absolutely necessary." She murmured a thanks and slipped out. By the time she reached the hallway, her heart thudded as if she'd just sprinted a full lap around the office. That evening, Emma's day ended later than anticipated. She was on her way out, laptop bag over her shoulder, scanning her phone for any last-minute emails, when a voice echoed across the polished floor of the lobby. "Emma!" She looked up to see Ms. Santos hurrying over. "I'm sorry to catch you so late," Ms. Santos said apologetically. "But Adrian asked if you could stop by his office in the morning, 8 sharp. He wants to run an idea by you." Emma's brows rose in surprise. "Me? An idea about what?" "I only know that he specifically said, 'Ask Emma if she's willing to consult on a departmental integration matter.'" His words, not mine. Ms. Santos offered an encouraging nod. "He respects your eye for detail, it seems." "I'll be there," Emma replied, swallowing a sudden flare of nerves. The word consult carried a serious ring, implying a deeper trust in her judgment than she was used to. But there was also a flicker of excitement. She tried not to let her mind race too much. "Perfect." Ms. Santos glanced at her watch. "Now hurry home before you miss your bus. See you tomorrow?" Emma thanked her, stepping out into the crisp evening air. The city lights twinkled overhead as she navigated the busy streets. She mulled over what kind of integration matter Adrian might want her perspective on. It felt strange. There were hundreds of more experienced staff he could ask. Why her? She reached her small apartment where the familiar clutter of moving boxes still waited to be unpacked. Dropping her bag on the couch, she sank into a chair, replaying the day's events. Fresh responsibilities, a budding sense of belonging, the memory of Adrian's gaze in the conference room. The swirl of it all was both exhilarating and daunting. Later that night, Emma tried to distract herself by organizing clothes in her closet, but her thoughts drifted again to Adrian. He was not just any CEO, there was a magnetism about him, a purposeful confidence that drew people in, balanced by unexpected kindness. She'd heard rumors about how ruthless he could be in negotiations, but she'd also heard from staffers that he'd once paid out of pocket to rescue an entire project from failing when the budget collapsed. That duality intrigued her. Yet, she reminded herself, she was just a secretary, new to the industry, new to the city. He was a powerful millionaire CEO with the entire corporate world vying for his time and approval. Any illusions of closeness should be checked at the door. She told herself that she was reading too much into a few polite gestures. Even so, she felt the flutter in her chest continue, as if hope insisted on living there. Bright and early, Emma arrived at the top floor at exactly 7:58 a.m., refusing to be late for an 8:02 a.m. invitation. She perched on one of the plush chairs in Ms. Santos's reception area, fidgeting with a pen. The seconds crawled by. Finally, Ms. Santos emerged, ushering her in. Adrian was on the phone, facing the panoramic skyline. He gave a subtle nod to acknowledge Emma. She quietly settled into a seat, scanning his office. Everything was meticulously organized. Thick volumes on business law and industry manuals lined his bookshelves. A massive painting, abstract, swirling lines of deep blue and gold, dominated one wall. For a split second, she wondered if the painting reflected Adrian's own blend of calm and ambition. He finished his call, turned, and offered her a polite smile. "Good morning." "Morning," she echoed, bracing herself for whatever came next. "I wanted to pick your brain," he began, settling into the chair behind his desk. "We're trying to streamline processes between two major departments, finance and client relations. Typically, that's handled by upper management, but it's proven tricky. I thought a fresh perspective might be valuable, especially one from someone who isn't entrenched in the daily politics yet." Emma blinked, absorbing his words. "That's quite the responsibility." He nodded. "Yes, but sometimes an outside viewpoint sees things we can't. You're methodical, and you pay attention to detail." He leaned forward, placing his hands flat on the desk. "I'd like your opinion on some internal documents. You can point out inefficiencies in communication or confusion in how tasks are assigned." She didn't know what shocked her more, that he was trusting her with something so significant, or that he genuinely thought she had insight to offer. I'll do my best. Though I can't guarantee I have the experience your team might have." Adrian's expression softened. "Emma, if I needed standard answers, I'd ask standard employees. I'm looking for honest, unfiltered feedback. That's why I came to you." Her pulse fluttered at the directness of his praise. "Of course. Thank you for trusting me with this." He spent the next 20 minutes walking her through overlapping processes, how the finance department requested data from client relations, how approvals got stuck in endless loops. Emma's pen flew as she scribbled notes. She asked clarifying questions, small details about who was responsible for certain sign-offs, how many updates got lost between email threads, whether there was a central database for cross-checking numbers. He answered patiently, occasionally stopping to highlight a document or annotate a chart with a quick flourish of his fountain pen. Midway through, Emma had an epiphany. Wouldn't it help if each department had a single liaison, someone who understands both finance metrics and the intricacies of client feedback? That way, you don't rely on scattered emails. You have one source of truth, so to speak. Adrian's gaze sharpened. "That's actually quite a good approach. We used to do that on a smaller scale years ago, but we let it go when the company expanded. Maybe we should revisit the idea in a modern context." She offered a smile, pushing aside her uncertainty. "You could test it as a pilot project. Start with a small group, see if it improves the workflow, then scale up." He leaned back, tapping his pen against the desk. "I like this. I'll mention it to the department heads. Let's see if we can bring you into the brainstorming session too." Emma's eyes widened. "Me? In a department head meeting?" That was definitely above her pay grade. Yet the sense of pride from his acknowledgement filled her with quiet thrill. "I'll do whatever helps." Adrian's lips curved. "You already have. This is exactly the type of input I was hoping for." A buzz from his phone distracted him. He glanced at the screen. "I have to jump on a conference call in 5. Thank you for coming in early." She rose to leave, gathering her papers. Thank you for giving me a chance to contribute. Let me know if there's anything else." He stood as well, an ingrained courtesy she noticed he always extended. "I certainly will. Have a good day, Emma." As she stepped out, Ms. Santos winked from behind her desk as though she sensed something was unfolding beyond mere work tasks. Emma tried to ignore the flush warming her cheeks. She reminded herself this was purely professional. He respected her thoroughness, but somewhere inside, a small voice insisted that this connection, so unexpectedly formed, ran deeper than instructions and spreadsheets. Emma's day blurred into a string of meetings and document reviews. By mid-afternoon, she was perched in a high-backed chair beside one of the finance supervisors, a slightly intimidating woman who spoke with brusque efficiency, listening intently to a discussion about data systems and monthly reporting structures. Her role was primarily to observe and note the departmental friction points, as Adrian had requested. Any time a manager mentioned something that caused delays or confusion, Emma jotted down the details, determined not to miss a thing. Still, she couldn't keep her thoughts from drifting. All morning, a spark of excitement had flared inside her. She enjoyed the challenge of analyzing organizational issues, felt gratified by the trust Adrian was placing in her, and even more so by how willingly others began to accept her input. She gave silent thanks that her nerves hadn't overwhelmed her. When the supervisor paused to answer an incoming call, Emma caught her reflection in the window. Tired eyes, a blouse slightly wrinkled from hours of sitting. But behind her own reflection, she glimpsed the grand skyline, a shimmering reminder that she was part of something bigger here. Part of her marveled at the transformation of her life in just a few weeks. Finally, the meeting ended. She stood, said her thanks, and carried her notes back to her small desk near the HR corner. Melanie was waiting with an eager look on her face. "Spill," Melanie demanded, wagging her pen. "I heard some executives mention your name while I was organizing the board's correspondence. Something about you giving them a new model for bridging departmental tasks?" Emma shrugged, trying not to appear too pleased with herself. "I just shared a couple of suggestions. It's not that big a deal." "Okay, Miss Humble. Everyone else is making it sound like it's a whole pilot program." Melanie narrowed her eyes, teasing. "Are you sure you're just a secretary?" A laugh escaped Emma. "I'm figuring that out myself. Adrian asked me to help identify communication bottlenecks. I guess he liked my approach." The moment the words left her mouth, she realized she'd casually referred to Mr. Lockhart by his first name. Her cheeks heated. Melanie's eyebrows shot up in glee. "Adrian?" she echoed in a mischievous tone. "So that's where we're at? First name basis with the big boss?" Emma floundered, pressing her lips together. "It's just something he insisted on. You know how formalities can hinder open conversation." She trailed off, noticing how unconvincing that sounded. "Mm-hmm," Melanie sang, tapping a folder against her chin. "Well, just be careful. I've worked here for a year, and I've never heard of him being so personally engaged with a newcomer. He's known to be cautious in his personal interactions. People even call him the unshakable gentleman, polite but distant." Emma fidgeted, not sure how to respond. "He's my boss, someone I respect. That's all." Melanie shrugged. "Of course. Just giving you a heads up. People talk in offices like these." At the mention of gossip, Emma felt a twist in her stomach. The last thing she wanted was to be the target of rumors about being close to the CEO. She'd seen enough romantic speculation in small companies. She couldn't imagine the intensity of it in a major corporation. "Thanks for the warning," she said quietly. She returned her focus to the notes, ignoring the swirling questions in her head about whether she and Adrian had been crossing lines of familiarity. She reasoned that plenty of executives referred to subordinates by first names. Likewise, employees occasionally addressed high-level folks informally, especially at big, modern companies, right? She tried to assure herself nothing was truly amiss. That evening, Emma decided to stay late to finalize a preliminary report summarizing her observations. She wanted to deliver something tangible to Adrian the next morning, solid evidence that she wasn't wasting his trust. Hour after hour slipped by until only the faint hum of climate control and the distant whir of a vacuum cleaner reminded her she wasn't the only one in the building. Finally, around 9 p.m., Emma emerged from her cubicle to stretch. She walked to the break room to find a glass of water. Just as she filled a cup from the water cooler, she noticed lights on in the conference room across the corridor. Glancing through the glass panels, she spotted Adrian. He stood at the head of the long table, jacket draped over a chair, collar unbuttoned slightly, reviewing documents on a projector screen. She hesitated. He looked deeply immersed, brow furrowed, the lines of concentration etched across his features. This was the side of him she'd heard about in passing, a relentless work ethic, sometimes working well into the night. She turned to go, but the faint squeak of her shoe against the tile must have given her away. Adrian glanced up, recognized her silhouette, and motioned politely for her to come in. Emma tiptoed in, feeling self-conscious. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt," she whispered. He turned off the projector, then offered a faint, tired smile. "You're not interrupting. I needed a break anyway. When I saw you, it felt like I was being rescued from spreadsheets." She smiled back, hugging the cup of water. "Did you lock yourself in here all evening?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Mostly. The joys of finalizing major merger documents." She nodded sympathetically. "I can guess how draining that must be. If it's any consolation, I've been finishing a write-up on the departmental issues." Her voice brightened with a hint of accomplishment. "I hope to have a short summary on your desk first thing tomorrow." His eyes lit up, interest flickering. "I appreciate that, truly. And now I feel less guilty about still being here. At least I'm not the only one burning the midnight oil." "Honestly," Emma said, stepping closer to the table, "I'm motivated. Doing real, meaningful work. It's exhilarating." He angled his head, giving her that penetrating look that made her heart skip. "I remember being your age, hungry for every challenge. Though I'll admit, not many interns or new hires showed your level of attention to detail. Most were just trying to survive the job, not shape it." Her cheeks warmed at the compliment. "I guess I've always liked finding solutions. Even when I was a teen, I'd reorganize the entire stockroom at my mom's shop just for fun." A grin tugged at his lips. "So you're a professional organizer at heart? That's what we need in these hectic offices." "I suppose," she said, sipping her water. Then an awkward silence fell, and Emma felt a wave of caution. Here they were, alone, late at night in a half-lit conference room. The hum of the overhead lights hovered between them like a fragile barrier. She cleared her throat. "I should probably let you get back to your spreadsheets. It's late." Adrian caught the note of hesitation in her voice. He took a step back from the table, as if carefully respecting an invisible boundary. "Yes, of course. Don't let me keep you. You must be exhausted, too." She forced a small laugh. "I'm used to these hours, believe it or not, but I'll call it a day now." She started heading for the door, then paused, turning back. "Good luck with the merger documents." He nodded, flipping open a folder as if to resume work. "Thank you, Emma. Good night." Stepping out into the hallway, Emma let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She couldn't deny that a faint sense of warmth had glowed in her chest during that short conversation. The closeness, the way his expression softened when he saw her, there was an undeniable pull there, unspoken yet potent, and it scared her. A relationship with the CEO was unthinkable. She needed to keep her professional boundaries crystal clear, or at least try to. Over the next few days, Emma's special project analyzing the departmental inefficiencies took center stage. Adrian arranged a small forum, bringing Emma in alongside the department managers. She felt out of place among individuals who boasted decades of corporate experience, but Adrian introduced her with a calm confidence that lent weight to her presence. "I've asked Emma to join us," he began, "because she's been studying our interdepartment processes with a neutral eye. She's found areas we might streamline. Let's walk through her recommendations together." The managers exchanged polite nods, their gazes respectful but curious. Emma proceeded to share her bullet points, showing how certain tasks overlapped or caused repeated back-and-forth queries. After her explanation, the discussion broke out, lively but constructive. Some managers resisted the changes, concerned about staff learning curves, yet others embraced them, pointing out how these ideas could indeed save time. In the midst of it all, Emma noticed Adrian occasionally glancing her way, offering a nod of encouragement. Each time, a little burst of confidence fueled her. By the end, everyone agreed to pilot a system with dedicated liaisons. They'd test it for a month and reconvene. Emma's role would be to monitor progress, gather feedback, and keep the lines of communication open. She left that meeting feeling a mix of exhilaration and disbelief. She was a new secretary, yet she'd just shaped a legitimate corporate pilot program. Had Adrian not nudged her forward, she doubted anyone would have listened. That afternoon, the synergy between Emma and Adrian's approaches became office gossip. Melanie caught up with her near the staff lounge, wide-eyed. "Girl, you are the talk of the floor. People are saying you basically orchestrated a mini-departmental revolution." Emma laughed nervously. "It's hardly a revolution, more like a small improvement." "Well, word is Mr. Lockhart had that proud CEO look on his face," Melanie teased. "That man doesn't show that often." "Please, you're going to make me self-conscious," Emma said, flushing. Melanie patted her shoulder, then leaned in. "Careful, though. People might start speculating. You know how rumor mills churn." The warning made Emma's heart dip. "I know," she murmured. "I don't want unnecessary drama. I'm just doing my job." "Just be prepared," Melanie advised gently. "Office culture can get weird. Jealousies, politics. Some might think you're getting special treatment." Emma braced herself. She'd tasted a hint of that dynamic before, but never on such a large scale. She vowed to stay humble, professional, and transparent about every success, making it clear that her progress came from hard work, not favoritism from Adrian. A few days later, Emma found a discreet note on her desk from Ms. Santos. "Mr. Lockhart asked if you're free for a quick check-in, 4 miles p.m., his office." She arrived promptly. Adrian was reviewing documents behind his desk and gestured for her to sit. "Just wanted to see how you're doing with the pilot's initial rollout," he explained. "I know implementing new systems can be rocky." Emma smoothed her skirt. "It's going relatively well. A few employees are confused about who to report certain issues to, but I've been clarifying. The liaisons themselves are enthusiastic so far." Adrian laced his fingers, eyes focused. "I appreciate your dedication, Emma. It's not every day someone takes on a project of this scope and handles it so gracefully." A gentle thrill coursed through her at the compliment, but she kept her tone even. "Thank you. I'm grateful for the opportunity." He leaned back, a contemplative expression passing over his face. "I realize you never got a proper orientation to the building. How about tomorrow I give you a quick guided walkthrough of each department? You'll get to meet staff face to face. It'll help you manage feedback better." Her breath hitched. The idea of spending an extended period alone with Adrian made her pulse quicken. But logically, it was a sound proposal. "That would be great," she answered, pushing aside the swirl of nerves in her stomach. He nodded, then checked his watch. "Let's plan for mid-morning. I have a board call at 9 but I should be free by 10:30. Sound good?" She mustered a smile. "Perfect." As she got up, their eyes locked for a fraction longer than usual. She was keenly aware of the subtle current between them, unmentioned but undeniably present. Clearing her throat softly, she broke eye contact. "I'll see you then." Adrian rose to walk her out, pressing the glass door open. "Until tomorrow, Emma." Stepping into the corridor, she released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. It was happening again, the quiet sense of closeness that both warmed her and made her wary. She needed to remain professional, she reminded herself firmly. She was a new employee, and he was the head of the entire corporation. Lines must be kept clear, but her heart, thumping in her chest, seemed to suggest that maybe those lines were already blurring. She was stepping into territory she'd never planned to navigate, where admiration and respect had begun to mingle with something deeper, and from the look in Adrian's eyes, she suspected he felt that pull too, whether he intended it or not. The next morning brought a mixture of excitement and unease for Emma. She arrived at work earlier than usual, determined to tidy her inbox and make sure her tasks were in order before the scheduled walkthrough with Adrian. Despite the building's typical morning buzz, her senses felt strangely heightened. Every click of the elevator doors, every phone ringing in the distance seemed more pronounced. By 10:25, she found herself sitting at her desk, double-checking an internal memo. Her thoughts kept drifting to the conversation with Adrian. How would this guided walkthrough actually unfold? How would co-workers perceive her strolling side by side with the CEO, especially after the rumors already swirling? At exactly 10:30, Ms. Santos stepped over. "He's ready for you now?" she said with a pleasant smile. "You two will be taking a route from finance down to public relations, I believe." Emma nodded, quickly gathering a small notepad and pen. "Thank you." She made her way to Adrian's office, heart thudding in her chest. The door was partially open and he stood by a shelf displaying corporate awards, evidence of the company's towering success over the years. His jacket hung neatly on the back of his chair, tie perfectly aligned. If he was under any stress or tension from the morning's board call, he didn't show it. Hearing her footsteps, Adrian turned. "Good morning, Emma," he greeted, offering a polite nod. "Shall we get started?" "Yes," she managed. "I'm all set." He walked out first, holding the door for her, and they headed down the corridor. Though the building was modern and used open-concept designs in many areas, there were still dozens of separate workspaces and sub-departments that Emma had only glimpsed from a distance. Adrian planned to change that today. At first, conversation revolved strictly around business. They visited the finance wing, greeting staff who dealt with cost analysis and budgeting. Adrian asked Emma to note any times employees mentioned duplicated tasks or complicated sign-offs. She wrote everything down diligently, aware of his watchful gaze. Together, they politely navigated each office cluster, picking up quick feedback from managers who looked both curious and impressed that the CEO was taking such a hands-on approach. After about half an hour, they transitioned to a hallway that connected finance to a more creative zone, the marketing team's open-floor environment. Vibrant posters and campaign mock-ups adorned the walls, a stark contrast to the sterile cubicles they'd just left behind. Staff bustled around a large glass board scribbled with colorful diagrams. The smell of coffee lingered near a communal kitchenette, where employees chatted animatedly about upcoming product launches. Adrian introduced Emma to several marketing leads, describing her role in improving interdepartment communication. One of them, a lively woman named Vanessa, greeted Emma with enthusiasm. "So you're the one who proposed the liaison idea," Vanessa exclaimed. "We're super excited about it. We want to know exactly who to talk to for finance matters so we can stop emailing half the building." Emma laughed, flattered, but also slightly self-conscious under Adrian's approving look. "It's a team effort," she said, deflecting the praise. "I'm just helping keep track of the feedback." Vanessa winked. "Well, keep up the good work. You'd be surprised how many creative ideas get lost in the corporate shuffle. If we have a direct line, that's gold." They continued on, weaving past desks where designers and project managers tapped away on sleek computers. Conversations in the air ranged from the color palette for a new ad campaign to market testing for a premium product line. Adrian occasionally paused to greet familiar faces, listening attentively. It was clear that employees admired him, though they visibly straightened when he came near. His presence commanded respect. They reached a quiet corner where a large digital screen displayed ongoing marketing analytics. Adrian gestured at the data with a thoughtful air. "I sometimes like to review these in real time," he told Emma. "It shows how swiftly campaigns are moving, whether we're hitting the targets we set for ourselves." Emma nodded, fascinated. It's amazing to see so many numbers that reflect actual consumer behavior. The speed must be challenging. It is, he agreed. Then his tone warmed. But it's worth it. The moment we see that something resonates with our customers, we can build on it in record time. She took a moment to glance around, noticing that even though they were in a crowd of employees, she felt a sense of shared space with him, as though their conversation formed its own private pocket. They moved on, heading toward the public relations department. The walls there were lined with press releases and framed newspaper articles featuring the company's achievements. Emma caught sight of Adrian's name in almost every article, a repeated thread in headlines about philanthropic efforts and business expansions. However, the hustle in PR was more subdued compared to marketing's bright chaos. People worked in small clusters, carefully drafting statements and replying to media inquiries. An older man with salt and pepper hair, presumably the department head, spotted Adrian and rushed over with a polite smile. "Mr. Lockhart," he said, greeting him warmly, "and you must be Ms. Brooks. I've heard quite a bit about your project." There was genuine respect in his eyes as he shook Emma's hand. "We're grateful for any step that helps us coordinate better with finance and marketing." Emma felt a tinge of relief that the new changes were being met with positivity. "Thank you. I'm just collecting input and making sure everyone's aligned." Adrian checked his watch. "We won't keep you too long. Just wanted Emma to get a sense of your workflows." They wound through the rows of PR desks, and more employees recognized Adrian, some offering shy waves or quick hellos. Emma noticed that a few curious glances flicked her way, but the staff mostly exuded an air of professional courtesy. She reminded herself to remain collected. After another half hour, they stepped away from the main areas, meandering back toward the central atrium. Warm daylight streamed through tall windows, highlighting the building's sleek design. Adrian paused next to a small lounge area with modern chairs and potted plants. One side overlooked the city through glass walls. The view was breathtaking. "Shall we take a short break?" he offered. "We've covered a lot of ground." Emma nodded, grateful for the chance to rest her feet. They settled in two adjacent chairs, and for a moment they simply observed the bustling street below. Cars inched through intersections, pedestrians hurried along sidewalks. High-rises punctuated the horizon. Adrian let out a quiet sigh, which sounded almost relaxed. "You don't realize how intense the office can be until you take a step back. It's good to breathe for a second." Emma glanced at him. "I'm surprised you're not used to all this constant movement." A soft chuckle escaped him. "I've been doing this for years, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Sometimes it helps to slow down, especially with so many responsibilities pressing at every hour." She studied his profile. There was a subtle tension around his eyes, as though the weight of 1,000 tasks were perched on his shoulders. "It's impressive that you maintain such composure," she said truthfully. "I'd be overwhelmed." He shifted to face her. In the bright daylight, she caught flecks of amber in his eyes. "I have moments of overwhelm, too," he admitted, "but I've learned to compartmentalize. Or I try to." His words trailed off, suggesting more was left unsaid. Maybe in a different context, he would have confided deeper worries or personal burdens. But here in a corporate lounge, they both recognized the boundaries of the moment. Still, the quiet that followed felt more intimate than a typical boss-employee break. Emma cleared her throat gently, hoping to steer the moment back on safe ground. "Anyway, the walkthrough has been incredibly helpful for me. Seeing the departments firsthand gives me a better sense of how they operate." "I'm glad," Adrian said. A small smile lifted the corners of his mouth, though it didn't erase the contemplative lines on his face. "Let's circle back to my office. I want to wrap up with a brief discussion on next steps." She rose and followed him through the spacious atrium back into the corridor that led to the executive suites. As they reached his door, Ms. Santos waved them in, then discreetly closed the door behind them. Adrian's office, with its panoramic windows and understated decor, felt like its own domain high above the city bustle. He gestured toward a seat at his round side table rather than his imposing main desk, signaling a more informal conversation. Emma sat, smoothing her skirt again, looking around at the elegant space. She couldn't deny a flare of awe whenever she stepped in here. There was something about the view, combined with the quiet confidence that Adrian exuded, that made the room feel almost serene. "All right," he began, placing a notepad before him. "You've seen the departments in action. I'd like to know your initial impressions. Any immediate thoughts on potential trouble spots?" She collected her own notes. "From what I've gathered, most staff are open to the pilot program. They seem relieved that the communication channels might become more transparent. The only hesitation I picked up on is from certain middle managers worried about short-term disruptions." "That's to be expected," Adrian said. "Change always brings tension. As long as it's constructive, we can manage it. Anything else?" She considered. "Well, it might help to host an informal Q&A session for the liaisons, like a workshop. That way they can ask questions or clarify their roles. It could ease confusion." His eyes lit with approval. "Excellent idea. I'll have Ms. Santos schedule it. And you'll be in attendance, of course. After all, you conceived the liaison concept." He leaned forward slightly. "How do you feel about presenting to them? Just a short talk to explain best practices?" Emma's stomach fluttered. She'd never given a formal presentation in this environment. But the surge of adrenaline was mingled with excitement. I'd be honored to." "Great." He made a quick note. "We'll keep it small. You'll do great." His confidence in her felt almost unreal. She nodded, letting herself smile in return. They spent the next few minutes hashing out details, Emma scribbling bullet points on how to structure the workshop. Adrian occasionally added a comment. His approach was collaborative, not dictatorial. She appreciated how he listened attentively. At last, the conversation wound down. Adrian checked the time on his smartwatch. "I have another meeting in 10 minutes, so I need to prepare. But before you go," he paused, eyes steady on her. "Thank you for being so dedicated. I hope you're not feeling too overwhelmed yourself." It struck her how genuine his concern seemed. "I'm managing," she said softly. "A lot of credit goes to the support I'm getting from you, and from others, of course." She added the last part quickly, not wanting to sound too familiar. His gaze flickered with something like warmth. "If you ever do feel overloaded, come to me. We'll figure out solutions together." She stood, gathering her notes. There was a short, charged silence, both aware of that subtle undertone that had followed them all day. Emma looked away first, clearing her throat. "I'll, see you later." Adrian rose, walking her to the door. "Yes, thank you again, Emma." Ms. Santos looked up from her desk as Emma emerged, but if she suspected anything, her expression remained politely neutral. Emma walked down the hallway with a swirl of conflicting emotions. Gratitude for the opportunities, wariness about fueling any rumor mill, and undeniably a budding sense of connection whenever she stood in Adrian's orbit. In the elevator ride down, she leaned against the wall, letting out a slow breath. She could almost laugh at the absurdity of it. Her boss, the famously reserved and successful CEO, was opening up to her in ways that felt more personal than strictly professional. Even if nothing inappropriate was said, the closeness was there. She wanted to deny it, but her heart hammered with the truth. It was a precarious line they were walking, and from the way he lingered with his gaze and thanked her with quiet sincerity, she was starting to suspect that he felt it too. Emma felt the days stretch and contract in the strangest way. On one hand, her workload doubled as she prepared the pilot program's liaison workshop, organized Q&A sessions, and updated Adrian daily on each department's progress. On the other, time seemed to fly whenever she stood at his side, discussing strategies, giving updates, or exchanging fleeting glances in passing. Their dynamic was respectful, professional on the surface, but a current of energy ran beneath every interaction, tugging at Emma's heart. She tried to maintain her composure by focusing on the tasks at hand. The workshop came together quickly. A small auditorium on the 15th floor was booked, slides were drafted, and invitation emails flew out to the newly appointed liaisons. Adrian insisted Emma take the lead in presenting the concept. While this thrilled her, it also brought jitters. She'd never addressed a room full of managers and senior staff under the watchful eye of the CEO. One late afternoon, Emma sat in a quiet corner of the company library with her laptop balanced on her knees. She was refining her presentation slides, rechecking each point. She'd included bullet lists outlining best practices like clarity in communications, streamlined sign-offs, and the importance of avoiding email overload. Each slide was punctuated by real-life examples gleaned from her departmental walkthroughs. Soft footsteps approached. Melanie appeared between the tall shelves, a coffee cup in hand. "Hey, studious as always," she teased, handing the cup to Emma. "I brought you a mocha. You look like you could use the caffeine." Emma's face lit up. "You have no idea how much I appreciate that. Thank you." She took a grateful sip. The gentle hum of the overhead lights and the faint aroma of old books gave the space a serene, studious vibe. "I'm almost done fine-tuning these slides." Melanie perched on the arm of a nearby chair. "You excited? Tomorrow's the big day, right?" A wave of nerves fluttered in Emma's stomach. "Yeah, I am excited, but also completely terrified." She exhaled slowly. "I've never presented in front of so many people from different departments, not to mention Adrian will be there." Melanie's eyes narrowed playfully. "Speaking of which, any interesting developments with him? The entire building knows he's given you this huge platform. Some folks are envious, some curious." Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks. "He's just trusting me with a project that I helped design, that's all. He's been supportive, but that's part of his job." Melanie smirked. Sure. But I've seen how you brighten up when you talk about him, and I've seen him look at you when you're not watching, like you're more than just another employee." She raised an eyebrow. "Just be cautious." Emma groaned softly. "I know. You've warned me, and I appreciate it. I'm trying to stay grounded. The last thing I want is to jeopardize my position or feed the rumor mill." "Good." Melanie patted her shoulder affectionately. "And I really do hope everything goes well for you, Emma. You deserve success. Just keep your eyes open, and not just for spreadsheets, if you catch my meaning." Rolling her eyes at the gentle teasing, Emma returned to her slides. Melanie slipped out after a few more encouraging words, leaving Emma alone. She spent another hour tweaking the color scheme and verifying that each example was clear. By the time she finished, she was confident that her talk was as polished as she could make it. The next morning, Emma arrived early to set up in the 15th floor auditorium. She tested the projector, flipped through the slides, and made sure the seats were arranged in a semicircle so it felt more like a collaborative workshop than a formal lecture. While she arranged some handouts on a table near the entrance, she felt a small presence at her side. Turning, she found Adrian there, wearing a tailored suit that perfectly matched his calm authority. "Good morning," he said, scanning the room. "Looks like you've got everything in order." Emma straightened her blouse, trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach. "I hope so. I want this to be helpful, not just a bunch of empty slides." He nodded, looking impressed by her thoroughness. "I'm certain it will be valuable. Once everyone arrives, I'll do a quick introduction, then pass the floor to you." He paused, his voice dropping slightly. "You look prepared." She swallowed. "I am. Nervous, but prepared." Adrian gave her a reassuring smile. "Nerves are normal. But remember, you know this material better than anyone. People will sense your passion." He glanced at his watch. "We should start in about 15 minutes. Let's greet everyone as they come in." Staff began to filter through the doors, including the designated liaisons. Some were department veterans, others new hires, and a few mid-level managers. They chatted in low voices, curiosity evident on their faces. Adrian stood by Emma, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries, while she guided folks to the available seats. More than once, Emma noticed subtle glances cast their way, but she reminded herself this was simply because the CEO rarely co-hosted events like this. At precisely 9:00 a.m., Adrian moved to the front, the room quieting instantly. "Good morning, everyone," he began, voice echoing slightly in the modest auditorium. "I won't take much of your time. We've gathered today to discuss a new step in interdepartmental coordination, one that I believe could streamline our operations significantly. But the credit for this idea and the plan we'll walk through belongs to Emma Brooks." He gestured toward her, and she stood, heart pounding. His words filled her with a mix of pride and humility. Emma has been working closely with different teams, analyzing our biggest bottlenecks. She's done an outstanding job. I'm confident you'll find her insights valuable. A smattering of polite applause followed. Emma exhaled to steady her nerves, then stepped to the front of the room. Adrian walked to the side, leaning against a table, arms folded loosely, his watchful presence an unspoken assurance. Clearing her throat, Emma clicked to her first slide. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. For those I haven't met, I'm Emma Brooks. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been gathering input from finance, marketing, public relations, and other departments. It's clear our biggest challenge isn't lack of skill or resources, it's coordinating tasks between teams that speak different languages." A few nods from the audience encouraged her. The liaison program is designed to fix that by creating a single point of contact for each key process, ensuring we avoid confusion or duplications. She shifted to the next slide, speaking with as much composure as she could muster. To her relief, she saw engaged faces. She explained how each liaison would gather relevant data from their department, confirm it with finance, and funnel it to the right leads in marketing or PR. She then referenced real-life pain points discovered in her research, like the marketing lead who used to email half the finance team for one request, or the PR manager who waited days for a single budget update because no one knew who was responsible for final approval. When she turned to her final slide, she concluded, "I realize it'll take time for everyone to adapt, but the next steps are fairly straightforward. Pick your departmental representative, document your biggest bottlenecks, and share them in a central channel so we can measure improvements. We're scheduling monthly check-ins to refine the process." A hush followed her last words, and Emma felt a tremor of anticipation. Then, one of the more senior managers raised a hand, complimenting her clarity and offering a question on implementation specifics. She answered confidently, referencing the slides and her notes. Another liaison chimed in, describing how excited he was to have one source of truth for data. A wave of conversation spread through the room, seemingly positive. Emma's shoulders eased from tension. People were talking about how to make the system work, not dismissing it. From her peripheral vision, she caught a glimpse of Adrian's approving expression, a small smile of pride. The adrenaline pumping through her veins gave way to a warm glow. As the session wrapped, a handful of employees approached to ask follow-up questions. Emma jotted down their concerns, promising to coordinate with them individually. Adrian moved around the room, shaking hands and thanking everyone for attending. Once the crowd had mostly dispersed, he returned to Emma's side. "That was excellent," he said in a low voice. "Exactly what I was hoping for. Clear, actionable, and you handled the Q&A smoothly." Emma felt relief and gratitude mingling inside her. "I'm just glad they're receptive. The pilot's success hinges on everyone's willingness to engage." "And they will," Adrian replied. "Your presentation gave them a sense of ownership. This is going to make a real impact." A brief silence followed, heavy with a sort of mutual acknowledgement. "Thank you, Emma," he repeated more softly, "for your time, your effort, your intelligence." A flush of warmth spread through her chest at the sincerity in his tone. "It's been an incredible opportunity," she managed. She glanced around the near-empty auditorium, conscious that a few people lingered near the back, chatting quietly. "I should probably tidy up the slides and gather my notes." Adrian placed a light hand on her arm just for a moment, steering her gently aside so they could speak without being overheard. "We can handle the rest. Ms. Santos will coordinate with the AV team. Why don't you take a moment to breathe? You've earned a break." Her pulse fluttered from that small touch, but she nodded. "Sure, I might go find some tea in the lounge." He gave a small, approving smile and let his hand drop. "If you have time later this afternoon, come by my office. I'd like to debrief how this went and see if there's anything else you need." "Okay, I will," she promised. As she stepped away, she noticed the hush of the auditorium and the subtle weight of the glances from the few who remained. She met one co-worker's eyes. There was nothing overtly hostile, but there was curiosity there. Emma forced a friendly nod and slipped out into the hallway, her heart still drumming at the intensity of the morning. A few minutes later, Emma found a quiet spot in the staff lounge, a steaming cup of green tea cradled in her hands. She stared out the large windows at the cityscape beyond. A swirl of emotions coursed through her, pride in what she had achieved, relief that it went well, and that persistent awareness of how Adrian's presence sharpened every moment. She still grappled with the moral lines and the threat of rumors. Yet there was no denying the sense of connection that kept building between them, rooted in respect and a fast deepening warmth. And from the way he spoke to her after the workshop, it was clear that for him, too, something had shifted from mere professional courtesy into far more personal territory. Early the following afternoon, Emma found herself perched at her desk, flipping through a set of newly delivered reports. The workshop had been a triumph, and the pilot program's momentum was already tangible. Department heads now sought her input, emailing questions and suggestions. The volume of her inbox stunned her. Clearly, many teams had yearned for a unified communication channel and found in Emma a sympathetic ear. She typed quickly, responding to inquiries about how best to document project updates. She was so focused, she barely noticed Melanie approaching, a sly grin on her face. "You're popular today," Melanie teased, tapping a knuckle on Emma's desk. Not surprising after how smoothly that workshop went. Emma rubbed her eyes, feeling the strain of the computer screen. "Yeah, well, success comes with a lot of follow-up. I just hope I can handle it without dropping any balls." Melanie leaned in conspiratorially. "Word in the break room is that Mr. Lockhart was quite impressed. Folks are saying you two work in sync, whatever that means." She shot Emma a suggestive look. A ripple of worry passed through Emma. "I don't want to feed any speculation," she said quietly. "Adrian is a great boss, and I'm just someone who had a good idea at the right time." Melanie shrugged. "If people are talking, it's because they see how well the two of you collaborate. I wouldn't panic. Besides, you've done nothing but prove yourself. That's a good thing, right?" Emma exhaled. "I guess so." She flipped open her calendar. "He asked me to drop by his office after lunch to debrief the workshop. I suppose we'll see how he wants to move forward." Melanie gave her a gentle push on the shoulder. "Go get some food first. You'll need the energy." Emma realized she had skipped breakfast and was indeed starving. Taking Melanie's advice, she headed down to the bustling company cafeteria. The space was modern, with sleek tables and a variety of food stations. She joined the queue for a sandwich, occasionally fielding friendly greetings from staff who recognized her. A part of her felt a tinge of self-consciousness. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight. Once she had her lunch, she found a quiet corner by the windows overlooking a landscaped courtyard. While she ate, she scrolled through her phone, letting her mind wander. She replayed the moment Adrian publicly credited her at the workshop's end. There had been unmistakable pride in his voice, something that felt more personal than an ordinary managerial endorsement. She pushed the thought aside, not wanting to overinterpret an act of kindness. Returning upstairs, she mentally prepared for the meeting with Adrian. She took a seat in the small waiting area outside his office. Ms. Santos, poised behind her polished desk, offered Emma a courteous smile. "He'll be right with you," she said, tapping a quick note into her computer. Moments later, the door opened. Adrian emerged, escorting a tall, sharp-suited woman carrying a glossy portfolio. The woman had a confident stride and greeted Ms. Santos with a friendly nod before catching sight of Emma and briefly acknowledging her with a half-smile. Emma assumed this must be an external consultant or perhaps a legal advisor. She looked like she belonged in top-tier negotiations. "Thank you for coming," Adrian told the woman in a neutral tone. "I'll review these documents and get back to you by next week." With that, the woman left. Adrian shifted his focus to Emma. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Please come in." Emma followed him into the office. The tall windows flooded the space with sunlight, illuminating the minimalist decor and making the city skyline shimmer in the background. Adrian closed the door, and she noticed the hush that enveloped them. It was just the two of them in a world high above the busy streets below. He gestured toward the same side table they'd used before. "Have a seat." Once settled, he unbuttoned his suit jacket and sat across from her, posture relaxed yet attentive. "I wanted to debrief yesterday's session and discuss the next phase. But first, how are you feeling after all that preparation and presenting?" Emma let out a light laugh. "Relieved, mostly. Grateful that people found it useful. Also a bit overwhelmed with all the follow-ups. I've gotten a lot of messages about the finer points of implementing the pilot." Adrian nodded. "That's normal. They see you as the go-to person now for clarifications, which is good, but it does mean your workload might spike." He regarded her carefully. "If it becomes too much, let me know. We can set boundaries or assign an assistant to help you manage the influx." She blinked in surprise. "An assistant? But I'm just—" He raised an eyebrow, smiling faintly. "You're the liaison lead at the moment. Titles can evolve. We can't have you buried under tasks that prevent you from seeing the bigger picture." He picked up a notepad. "As for the next phase, I've spoken to the department heads. They want to schedule monthly check-ins and see if we can unify some of our project management software. I told them we'd get back to them with a plan." Emma felt a surge of excitement. "I've been thinking about that. Integrating a shared platform could reduce confusion, but we need guidelines for how each department logs updates. Without them, it's chaos." Adrian leaned forward, eyes bright with interest. "Exactly. That's what I was hoping you'd say." He scribbled a note. "I propose we do a trial run with one software tool in a single department, measure results, and if it works, roll it out to others. You could coordinate that trial." She swallowed. "I can handle that, yes. It'll require me to meet with the software vendor, get departmental feedback and lead the pilot." "Precisely." He finished her sentence, an amused spark in his gaze. "You have a knack for pilot programs, Ms. Brooks." Her lips curved in a soft smile. "I guess that's my niche now." The fleeting humor gave way to a charged quiet. Emma felt her pulse thrum at his casual use of Ms. Brooks, which carried a tinge of affection despite its formality. His expression turned thoughtful. "You've stepped into a major role very quickly. I don't want to overwhelm you, or for you to think this is all too sudden." Emma shook her head. "I'm grateful for the trust. Honestly, it's invigorating. I've learned so much already. I just hope I'm not overstepping by taking on tasks usually reserved for more senior personnel." "Overstepping?" he echoed. "Not at all. I picked you because you're good at this. The rest is just job titles." He paused, then spoke more quietly. "I also value your perspective in general. You bring clarity to a place that can get lost in corporate speak." She felt her cheeks warm. This was veering into more personal territory again. Before she could muster a response, he glanced at the clock. "I'm due to meet a board member in 15 minutes, but I wanted to extend an invitation. Would you join me for lunch tomorrow? Not in the cafeteria, somewhere quieter. We can talk about the next steps in a more relaxed setting." Her heart fluttered. Lunch with the CEO? Outside the building? She hesitated, aware how it might look, but the gentle sincerity in his voice disarmed her doubts. "Are you sure? I don't want to intrude on your schedule." "It's no intrusion." He gave her a measured look. "I'd like to hear your thoughts in a setting where we're not rushing between meetings, if you're comfortable with it." She swallowed. Logic told her this might fuel rumors, but a stronger voice whispered that she wanted to accept. Professional collaboration aside, she wanted the chance to talk more openly with him. "All right," she said softly. "I'd like that." A faint smile lit his features. "Great. Let's say around 1 p.m. I'll have Ms. Santos book a car." She nodded, standing up. "Thank you. I'll finalize some ideas on the software integration beforehand." He walked her to the door. As her hand touched the doorknob, she paused. A swirl of conflicting thoughts filled her. Excitement at his invitation, worry about crossing invisible lines, anticipation of that quiet lunch. She glanced back at him. "I appreciate the opportunity. For everything." His voice matched her subdued tone. "Likewise." He opened the door for her, and she slipped into the hallway. Emma's thoughts whirled as she made her way back to her desk. Lunch outside the office was a different dynamic altogether, an unmistakable shift that could appear less like a routine meeting and more like something else. She inhaled slowly, trying to quell the uneasy thrill in her stomach. For the rest of the day, she worked diligently, scheduling vendor demos for the new software pilot and responding to yet more department queries. But in the back of her mind, the prospect of a private lunch with Adrian loomed, stirring both excitement and a flicker of anxiety about how closely they were treading the boundary between professionalism and personal connection. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. would reveal much, how they would navigate that line and whether stepping beyond it might be inevitable. Emma arrived at the office the next day with her heart thrumming a beat faster than usual. The morning's routine tasks, checking emails, updating scheduling requests, scanning new finance memos, felt almost surreal. Every so often she caught herself glancing at the clock on her screen, mentally counting down the hours until 1 p.m. She scolded herself for the anticipation, but it refused to fade. By late morning, she'd finished drafting a short proposal on how to pilot the project management software. She saved the file, double-checked its bullet points, and then forwarded it to Adrian's inbox. A polite, "Looking forward to discussing this with you soon," in the email's body was her only acknowledgement of the lunch waiting on the horizon. Shortly after noon, Melanie meandered over, arms crossed with casual curiosity. "You seem jittery," she observed, half teasing, half concerned. Emma forced a laugh. "I'm just trying to finalize something for Mr. Lockhart before 1 so." Melanie hummed knowingly. "Any particular reason that 1 hour is special?" Emma hesitated. Melanie was her friend, after all. "He asked me to join him for lunch," she said, keeping her tone neutral. "Strictly business, apparently. We have project details to discuss." Melanie's brows arched. "Outside the building, right? He never goes to the cafeteria for something like that." Emma nodded. "Yes. Ms. Santos mentioned that a company car would take us somewhere." She rubbed the back of her neck. "I'm doing my best not to overthink it." Melanie studied her a moment, then patted her arm. "As long as you're comfortable. If it starts feeling weird, you can always keep it strictly about the pilot program. I trust your instincts." Emma gave a small, grateful smile. "Thanks for not grilling me too hard." Melanie shrugged with a friendly grin. "I'll let you get back to it, but keep me posted." Alone again, Emma tried to steady her thoughts by focusing on small tasks. Yet her mind betrayed her, conjuring images of a quiet restaurant booth, of casual conversation that might stray from standard corporate lines. She reminded herself that lunch was an extension of the business trust Adrian had shown her. Nothing more. It was vital to remain calm. At exactly 12:50, Ms. Santos called her desk. "Emma, the car will be here in 10 minutes. Mr. Lockhart will meet you in the main lobby." Emma smoothed her blouse, her reflection in the screen reminding her to keep her posture straight and her expression poised. She grabbed a small folder containing printed notes on the software pilot, hoping that brandishing official documents might keep her grounded in the professional realm. She took the elevator down to the lobby. The glass doors revealed an overcast sky outside, with a faint breeze rustling the trees near the entrance. Adrian was already there, talking in low tones with a driver in a neat black uniform. Emma approached quietly, and the driver nodded politely before stepping away to open the car door. Adrian turned, giving Emma a brief smile. "Ready?" Her heart fluttered at his warm tone. "Yes," she replied. She clutched her folder, remembering all the potential improvements she'd listed for discussion. "I brought some notes to go over, if that's all right." "That's perfect," he said, ushering her toward the sleek black sedan. "I'd love to hear your thoughts." Inside, the car's interior was plush and cool, the tinted windows shielding them from the busy midday traffic. Emma settled into the leather seat, reminding herself to maintain a professional bearing. Adrian sat beside her, not too close, but the enclosed space made her vividly aware of his presence. The driver pulled away from the curb, merging into the city flow. The ride took less than 10 minutes. Emma tried to note the route, a couple of turns through bustling streets, passing modern shops and high-rises. They arrived at an understated building with a clean, minimal sign. She recognized it as one of the city's more exclusive restaurants. Her nerves spiked briefly. Wasn't this place known for power lunches and quiet, private dining rooms favored by executives? They stepped out onto the sidewalk, and Adrian led her in with the assured stride of someone who had been here before. A discreet hostess greeted them. Adrian exchanged a few words, and they were quickly guided toward a corner table near a floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked a small, landscaped courtyard. Soft music played overhead, and the atmosphere felt intimate despite the occasional hum of other patrons engaged in hushed conversations. Emma perched on a comfortable chair, setting her folder on the table. Adrian sat opposite her, and as soon as the hostess left them with menus, he turned his attention to Emma. "I hope this place is okay," he said. "I wanted somewhere where we could talk without interruption." She nodded, trying to steady her breathing. "It's lovely, thank you." Her gaze flicked to the menu. Pre-fixed lunches, locally sourced ingredients, definitely an upscale setting. She swallowed. "So, about the software pilot. I was thinking we start with the marketing department. They're used to agile processes and might adapt faster." A small smile curved Adrian's lips. "I appreciate your dedication to business, but we can breathe a moment before diving in." He glanced around. "Let's order something first, then we'll tackle the pilot talk." Emma complied, scanning the menu. She chose a light pasta dish, while Adrian opted for a grilled fish option. After they placed their orders, quiet settled over the table. She felt the weight of his gaze, not uncomfortable but definitely more personal than their office interactions. He leaned forward slightly, fingers laced. "Emma, I know it might be unusual for a CEO to bring a staff member to lunch like this. I want you to know, my intent is simply to discuss our projects in a more relaxed environment." She appreciated the acknowledgement. "I understand. You've given me a lot of responsibility. It makes sense that we coordinate outside the hustle of the office." She paused, then added more quietly, "Thank you for trusting me with all of it. I'm still a bit amazed." His eyes warmed. "When I find someone with both talent and sincerity, I want to encourage them. Large corporations can overlook rising voices, and I don't want that to happen here." She felt her cheeks color faintly. "I won't let you down." Their food arrived, allowing Emma a momentary reprieve from the deep undercurrent in his voice. She twirled a forkful of pasta, focusing on the appealing aroma. Adrian tasted his dish and murmured approvingly about the chef's skill. For a few minutes they spoke casually about small things, recent events in the city, a mention of a new art exhibit Adrian had heard about. Emma found herself relaxing, half surprised by how easy it was to talk with him about non-work topics. He offered glimpses of personal interests. He enjoyed modern art, sometimes visited local galleries during off hours. She admitted she was more a fan of quiet reading spots, though she loved a good museum visit now and then. Eventually, though, the conversation drifted back to the software pilot. Emma retrieved her folder, careful to keep any stray sauce from the pristine pages. She outlined her proposed rollout plan. Marketing first, a 2-week trial, daily logs from the designated liaison, then a meeting to review initial data. Adrian listened intently, occasionally cutting in with a question about risk management or how to train staff quickly. Emma answered, referencing her notes. Being in this calm, refined setting without the usual office buzz, she found she could think more clearly. The synergy between them felt effortless. Every time he raised a concern, she had an idea for addressing it. Whenever she introduced a concept, he gave considered feedback. At one point, Adrian chuckled softly. "I have to say, you're a natural at this. You've practically written a mini rollout strategy overnight." She smiled, taking a sip of her water. "I had a lot of reference points from the liaison pilot, and, well, I like problem solving. It's kind of a hobby, I guess." His gaze held admiration. "I can see that. In another life, you might be heading up your own consulting firm." A flutter of self-consciousness brushed her. "I wouldn't go that far. I'm just trying to be helpful." Their plates were cleared away by the discreet server. Emma noticed that there were a handful of other tables occupied, some with individuals dressed in suits, but no one seemed to be paying them particular attention. Still, she was keenly aware of how this scene might look. Adrian Lockhart, high-profile CEO, sharing a quiet, almost intimate lunch with a subordinate. She forced herself not to dwell on it. As coffee was served, Adrian grew thoughtful again. "Emma," he said softly, his voice dipping to a near murmur, "I realize you probably hear a lot of talk in the halls. Gossip, speculation. I don't want this lunch to feed any misunderstandings about my intentions. You have every right to be cautious." Her pulse jumped at his directness. She set her coffee cup down carefully. "People do notice, yes, but I trust that you wouldn't put me in a compromising situation." He looked relieved by her statement, then nodded. "I hope to maintain that trust. I genuinely value your contributions and want you to thrive here." He paused, and there was a flicker in his eyes that felt undeniably personal. "But if ever you sense that line being blurred, if it makes you uneasy, please tell me." Emma took a breath. The moment felt charged, as though they were both acknowledging the quiet magnetism neither had voiced openly. She met his gaze. "I will," she promised, "but so far I feel respected." A tiny, grateful smile curved his mouth. Silence lingered for a beat, and Emma caught the swirl of emotions in his expression. Then he gestured to the coffee cups. "Shall we finish these and head back? I know we both have more on the agenda." She nodded, wrapping both hands around her cup for warmth. The tension relaxed, replaced by a subdued sense of closeness. They sipped their coffee, letting small talk fill the final moments. A new museum piece Adrian planned to see, an anecdote about Emma's old job back in her hometown. Unremarkable topics, yet each exchanged glance felt like shared understanding. When they settled the bill, paid swiftly by Adrian, ignoring her quiet protest, they stepped outside to find the driver already waiting. The sky remained overcast, a gentle wind brushing Emma's hair from her face. She followed Adrian back into the car, and as they drove toward the towering office building, she felt a mixture of relief, gratitude, and a deeper stirring that refused to be pinned down. Their conversation had reaffirmed the professional trust between them, yet also hinted at a deeper connection. Emma could almost sense that the ground beneath them was shifting. They had approached the edge of a boundary, acknowledging it from both sides without daring to cross it outright. For now, at least, they had an unspoken agreement: keep things honorable, keep things safe. But as the car pulled up to the lobby and Emma gathered her folder, she wondered how long that boundary would hold. The flicker in Adrian's eyes, warm, sincere, and searching, suggested they were dancing on the brink of something far more complicated than a streamlined software rollout. And part of her, to her own surprise, found it increasingly difficult to deny how much that intrigued her. By the next day, news of Emma and Adrian's successful lunch meeting had spread in the form of subtle chatter echoing through the halls. Nobody claimed they had direct proof of anything beyond work, but the mere fact that Mr. Lockhart had taken Emma off-site for a quiet meal was enough to stir speculation. A handful of colleagues congratulated Emma, praising her for landing FaceTime with the big boss. Some, however, dropped innocent but probing questions. So, how was that fancy restaurant? Did you talk about anything else besides the pilot program? Emma offered polite, guarded answers, revealing nothing that might fan the flames of rumors. Meanwhile, the real focus was turning more intensely on the next pilot, the new project management software. Within days of her returning from that lunch, Emma had arranged demos for the marketing department to see how the tool functioned. She orchestrated test logins, circulated sample tasks, and scheduled short Q&A sessions where staff could practice updating timelines and budgets. The energy around the potential new system buzzed with promise. Some employees felt a little intimidated by the sleek interface, but Emma made sure to be on call, walking them through the basics with calm, patient instruction. Adrian followed these developments closely, checking in every afternoon for status updates. Sometimes he'd simply swing by Emma's workstation, causing a ripple of attention from coworkers, and ask, "How's the rollout? Any snags?" She'd fill him in, they'd confer briefly, and he'd depart with a nod of thanks. Their conversations remained perfectly businesslike in public. Yet behind the efficiency, Emma sensed the same undercurrent of personal warmth. On a cloudy Thursday morning, the marketing manager, Vanessa, pinged Emma with a concern. "Some staff are mixing up final documents with draft versions. They're worried about overwriting data." Emma recognized the seriousness of that glitch. One incorrectly saved file could sow confusion about product details or marketing budgets. She told Vanessa she'd bring it straight to the software's vendor liaison. Armed with her notes, Emma headed to a small conference room on the 12th floor. She'd arranged for a live troubleshooting session with the vendor rep via video call. The large monitor flickered on, and the rep's face appeared, an affable man named Colin, who specialized in corporate software integrations. Emma methodically explained the file version concerns. Colin demonstrated the system's built-in version control, clarifying how employees should label drafts. Emma took thorough notes, determined to draft a simple bullet-point guide for everyone. As the call ended and she tidied her notes, the door creaked open. Adrian stepped inside, politely tapping the frame. "Mind if I join? Ms. Santos said you were here." She motioned for him to enter. "Of course. I just finished with the vendor rep. We've got a plan to fix that versioning confusion." He sank into a seat at the small table, scanning her scribbled bullet points. "Efficient as always," he said with a slight grin. "Are you feeling comfortable with the pace of these improvements? It's a lot to handle on top of your day-to-day tasks." Emma nodded. "It's busy, but it's manageable. I'll write up an internal memo with step-by-step instructions so no one overwrites crucial files." Adrian leaned back, arms crossing casually. "Perfect. I'd like to ensure each department sees how quickly we're responding to issues. If you need more resources, an extra person to help with the training or documentation, just tell me." She appreciated the offer. I think I can still manage solo, but if it grows, I'll let you know. She paused, nibbling her lip. Sometimes I wonder if I'm taking on too much, but I actually enjoy it. Feels good to see real improvements. He studied her for a moment. That's the mark of someone who thrives in problem solving. I was the same at your age, he admitted, always wanting more tasks, more challenges, but be careful not to burn out. Emma smiled softly. I will, thank you. Another hush settled. She recognized that shift. The moment they acknowledged a closeness that transcended typical boss-employee chats. Here they were, alone in a quiet conference room, exchanging genuine concern and encouragement. Emma inhaled a steadying breath, stepping carefully away from the brink of personal territory. I should head back and finalize the memo. Maybe gather screenshots to illustrate the steps. Adrian stood, offering her a polite half-smile. Good idea. I'll check in with you later. He held the door for her, and they left together. All day, Emma threw herself into writing that user guide. By early evening, she hit send, distributing it company-wide. She stayed a bit later than most, ensuring that the email went out without formatting glitches and preparing for the influx of immediate questions. As expected, employees responded with queries. Which naming convention do we use? Where do we store final versions? Emma replied patiently, relieved that so far the new system seemed to be taking root. Eventually, she noticed the office had grown still. The overhead lights dimmed to their nighttime setting. Beyond her cubicle, only a few pockets of illumination marked the presence of maintenance staff. She shut down her computer, stretching stiff muscles. With a deep sigh, she packed her bag and made her way to the elevator lobby. On her way, she spotted light spilling from a smaller meeting room near the far end of the corridor. Someone else was burning the midnight oil. Curiosity tugged at her, but she didn't want to intrude. She carried on until she heard voices, one faintly recognizable as Adrian's, the other smooth and distinctly female. She slowed, footsteps hushed by the plush carpet. Through the glass partition, she glimpsed Adrian speaking with that elegant woman Emma had seen leaving his office a few days before, the tall, polished professional carrying a glossy portfolio. They seemed engrossed in conversation, documents spread across the table. Emma caught no more than a few words. The final settlement. Crucial to keep discreet, the woman said. Emma felt a twinge of guilt eavesdropping, but the mention of settlement piqued her curiosity. She didn't want to snoop, yet something about the tension in Adrian's posture made her linger. His face was serious, brow creased. The woman pointed to a line in a document, and Adrian nodded gravely. Suddenly, the woman raised her head, catching sight of Emma's reflection in the glass. Her expression flickered with mild surprise. Emma, startled, pretended she'd just been passing by. She mustered a polite nod and continued down the hall, heart racing. She wasn't sure if Adrian had noticed her or not, but she hurried to the elevator before she could be caught in an awkward moment. That night, as she commuted home, her mind spun. She recalled fragments, that woman's crisp, calm demeanor, talk of a settlement, and Adrian's somber expression. Could it be legal matters about the pending merger, or a lawsuit, or was it purely personal, a family issue? Emma replayed Adrian's mention of wanting discretion. She told herself it wasn't her business, but curiosity gnawed at her, mixing oddly with a faint prickle of jealousy. That notion embarrassed her. Adrian was allowed to have private matters, and his association with another woman, be it legal counsel or something else, was beyond her concern. Still, she couldn't shake the unsettled feeling. She reminded herself that the boundary between them, however blurred at times, was firmly anchored in professional respect. The next day, if Adrian wished to share any updates, he would. She had no right to pry. The following morning, Emma noticed the hush around Adrian's office was more pronounced. Ms. Santos tapped away on her keyboard, her demeanor as poised as always. but there was a tenseness in her jaw Emma hadn't seen before. Emma asked quietly, "Is Mr. Lockhart in today?" Ms. Santos nodded, leaning in. "He's in a meeting. I believe he has back-to-back appointments until late afternoon. Some of them are confidential." Emma swallowed. "Got it. Well, if he needs me, let me know." She returned to her station, trying to refocus on her tasks. The software pilot needed more data collection from marketing's design sub-team, who were just starting to post real-time updates on ongoing campaigns. She busied herself with verifying that the logs were accurate. Around midday, an unexpected email popped into Emma's inbox from an external address she didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Urgent, inquiry about company leadership." She frowned. Typically, external inquiries went through public relations. Still, she opened it out of caution. The sender introduced themselves as a journalist investigating corporate leadership changes. The tone was politely direct. "We're hearing rumors about new strategies at your company. Any comment on whether these changes are internally driven by a certain special relationship in top management?" Emma's stomach dropped. The email didn't explicitly name her or Adrian, but the hint was too close for comfort. She reread the lines. "We have sources suggesting a rising staffer is influencing major decisions. Please confirm or deny." Her fingers went cold on the keyboard. This was precisely the rumor scenario she dreaded. Quickly, Emma closed the email, heart pounding. She certainly wasn't authorized to speak for the company, nor did she want to respond to speculation. She forwarded the message to PR with a short note. "Unsolicited inquiry. Please advise on how to proceed." Then she shut her laptop, took a moment to breathe, and forced herself to move on. Could a random journalist have caught wind of internal chatter or glimpsed her with Adrian? Minutes later, Emma's phone rang. The display showed an internal extension from PR. "Hi, this is Dana from Public Relations," said a brisk female voice. "We saw your forward. Thanks for alerting us. We'll handle it. If that reporter contacts you directly, politely refer them to us. Do not engage further, please." Emma exhaled, relieved. "Of course. I'm sorry for any trouble." "No need to apologize. This stuff happens sometimes. We'll see if it escalates," Dana replied. "Just keep your head down. We might come to you if we need clarity." As the call ended, Emma felt a swirl of tension. The rumored synergy between her and Adrian had apparently spread beyond internal whispers. It was one thing to hear office gossip, but external media attention, especially about top leadership, was a different beast altogether. She decided she'd bring it to Adrian's attention if the right opportunity arose, though she didn't want to add to his burdens if he was wrestling with bigger issues. She tried to power through the rest of her tasks, ignoring the faint sense of dread that someone was spinning a narrative of favoritism or an inappropriate relationship. When Adrian's schedule finally freed up in the late afternoon, she found herself summoned to his office for a routine check-in. Summoning her composure, she grabbed her notes on the pilot program's progress and made her way up. He greeted her with a weary nod. There were noticeable shadows under his eyes, and the normally impeccable set of his shoulders looked tense. Still, he offered a cordial smile. "Emma, thanks for coming. Let's go over the system updates, shall we?" He gestured for her to sit in the familiar chair by his side table. She slid into the seat, carefully placing her notes. "Of course." She summarized the improvements in version control, staff feedback from the design sub-team, and her plan to start measuring productivity gains next week. Adrian listened, pen tapping a steady rhythm on the table. "Sounds like progress is real. Good. We can use those metrics to justify a broader rollout soon." He sighed, leaning back. "I apologize if I'm not fully present. It's been quite the day." Emma dared a glance at his troubled expression. The memory of seeing him with that mysterious woman last night flickered in her mind. She hesitated. Should she mention the email from the journalist or the tension swirling around? Instead, she first voiced genuine concern. I hope everything's okay. A pause. He studied her face, seeming to weigh how much to reveal. Just dealing with some external matters. A legal complication that needs careful handling. He didn't elaborate, but his gaze softened, as if he sensed her worry. It's nothing for you to be concerned about. Keep your focus on the pilot. He offered a small, tired smile. You're doing great work. Emma exhaled a quiet breath. Thank you. And if there's anything I can do to help, just let me know. His eyes lingered on her, gratitude evident. I will. But for now, it's something I need to handle on my own. He straightened. Actually, Ms. Santos mentioned PR received a suspicious email, someone fishing for a story about internal changes. Did that come to you? She nodded, relieved he brought it up first. Yes, it arrived in my inbox around noon. I forwarded it to PR. They said they'd handle it and told me not to engage. Adrian frowned. Good. If any journalist tries to corner you, refer them to the PR department. The last thing we need is half-truths fueling rumors. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. I'm sorry this nonsense is landing on you, Emma. Rumors can be vicious when they revolve around the top floor. She forced a reassuring smile, feeling a pang of protective sympathy. I'll be careful, and I won't let it distract me from the project. He nodded, looking both tense and appreciative. Thank you. Truly. Let's wrap this up for now. I have a late appointment with the board in half an hour. She gathered her papers, rose from the chair. Their gazes locked for a moment longer than necessary. Emma saw the lines of worry on his brow and felt a tug of longing to offer comfort, but she kept her tone measured. Take care, Adrian. You too, he replied softly. Don't stay too late. Stepping out, Emma's mind spun. The glimpses of his personal struggles, the external queries about internal changes, and her own role in a newly successful pilot program. It was all colliding. She realized that while she was forging a remarkable path professionally, the swirl of rumors and behind-the-scenes tensions might intensify. And if she and Adrian weren't careful, they could find themselves at the center of a much larger storm. Emma returned to her desk, finishing off the day's tasks with a sense of cautious resolve. She would hold on to her professionalism and do her job well. Nothing else could be more important right now. But she couldn't deny the complicated stir of emotions she felt for her CEO, or the protective concern welling inside her. Treading that delicate line between corporate success and personal entanglement was about to get even more challenging. The next few days turned into a whirlwind for Emma. The project management software pilot roared forward with renewed energy. Departments outside marketing were already asking when they could join. Emma found herself fielding emails from sales, customer service, and even manufacturing leads in far-off branch offices. Although the busy pace energized her, she also felt the rising pressure. It was one thing to coordinate a pilot for one department. Expanding it meant more training sessions, more Q&A, and more opportunities for things to go wrong. Adrian checked in periodically, but he seemed perpetually preoccupied. A few times, Emma glimpsed him striding through the corridors with that same mysterious woman, tall, poised, portfolio in hand. Their expressions were serious, voices low and urgent. Neither one smiled. The pair often retreated into locked conference rooms for extended meetings that blocked off entire chunks of Adrian's schedule. When Emma tried to discreetly ask Ms. Santos if everything was all right, the assistant's expression grew guarded. Mr. Lockhart is dealing with some complex business matters, Ms. Santos told her in a gently polite tone. Don't worry about it. He's perfectly capable of handling it. But the assistant's eyes hinted at deeper worries she kept to herself. Emma forced her curiosity to the sidelines. She had enough on her plate ensuring that marketing's final presentations were properly logged in the new system without messing up version controls again. Her user guide was pinned to many cubicles now, staff sometimes jokingly calling it their Brooks Bible. Emma blushed whenever she heard that, but also felt a quiet pride at how integral her suggestions had become. Late one Tuesday afternoon, Emma was gathering data from the pilot to present a small progress report. She'd come up with a simple metric: how many hours each team saved by eliminating repetitive email threads. The numbers were promising. She planned to show Adrian the time savings so they could decide if the next department could start adopting the software in full. But Adrian was nowhere to be found. Ms. Santos said he was out of the office for a lunch meeting, but Emma noticed it stretched on and on. By 3 p.m., he still hadn't returned. The minutes ticked by and tension began to mount inside her. She knew rationally that CEOs often had unpredictable schedules. However, the memory of that journalist's email and the cryptic settlement talk haunted her thoughts. Around 4 p.m., a ping sounded on Emma's phone. A text from an unknown number. Heard your name come up in conversation around special counsel. Stay alert. Rumors can get nasty fast. Her heart kicked in her chest. She stared at the message, knuckles whitening around her phone. The word special counsel reminded her of the polished woman who always carried a portfolio. Had she let slip that Emma was somehow involved in Adrian's internal changes? Or was someone else feeding this anonymous tipster? The message felt like a warning shot. She immediately blocked the number, refusing to engage. Her chest still tightened at the reminder that prying eyes were everywhere. By 5 p.m., Adrian still hadn't appeared. Emma decided to finalize the progress report anyway and then head home. Just as she was about to log off, Ms. Santos hurried over. "Emma, Mr. Lockhart just called," she said, voice hushed. "He's asking if you're still here. He'd like to see you in his office in 10 minutes. Emma frowned, checking the time. Most employees were gone by now. "He's back?" Ms. Santos nodded briskly. "Yes, arrived just now. Please don't mention this to anyone else. He said it's urgent." A ripple of apprehension flooded Emma. She saved her files, grabbed her notes, and headed to the top floor. The hallway was dimly lit, the after-hours hush amplifying each of her footsteps. She paused at the office door, swallowing hard, then knocked softly. "Come in," Adrian's voice called. She opened the door to find him standing by the window, jacket off, tie loosened. The city lights glowed behind him, an urban sunset fading in the sky. His silhouette looked tense, hands in his pockets. Emma immediately sensed the gravity of his mood. "You wanted to see me?" she asked gently, stepping inside. He turned, exhaustion etched in the lines around his eyes. "Yes. Thank you for coming." He motioned for her to sit, but this time not at the side table. Instead, he indicated the small couch near the far wall, away from the formal desk. This shift startled Emma. It felt more personal, more like a private conversation than a typical briefing. She settled onto the couch, notes in hand. Adrian remained standing for a moment, silent, as though wrestling with how to begin. Finally, he joined her, leaving a small space between them. He exhaled, and she caught the faintest tremor in his posture. "I'm sorry if I pulled you away from finishing your day," he said. "Things have been complicated on my end." Emma set her notes on her lap. "I understand. I hope everything's all right," she managed, careful not to pry too openly. "I've noticed the company is buzzing about some changes or legal matters." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, then a rueful twist of his lips. "News travels fast in a place like this." He ran a hand through his hair, looking far from the polished CEO persona. "The short version is that we're facing a potential lawsuit over the last merger. There were allegations from a former partner that certain terms weren't met, and they're demanding a settlement. That's why you've seen me meeting with special counsel so often." Emma's stomach tensed, recalling the glimpses of him with that tall woman in corridors and late-night conference rooms. "I'm sorry," she said earnestly. "That must be really stressful?" He nodded. "It is. This could affect the company's reputation if it goes public. I've been trying to resolve it quietly and..." Apparently, a few journalists got wind of it. They're sniffing around everything, including my personal relationships, looking for scandal. That's probably why you received that suspicious email." Emma's thoughts flashed to the cryptic text message on her phone earlier. She shivered at how easily her name could be dragged into a corporate legal battle. "I don't want to make trouble for you," she said, voice quiet. He leaned closer, not touching her but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence. "You're not making trouble," he murmured firmly. "No matter what rumors swirl, you've done nothing wrong. All you did was excel at your job. If anyone suggests otherwise, they're either misguided or malicious." Relief coursed through her, though concern still lingered. "If this gets nasty," she asked softly, "could it threaten the pilot program or our departmental changes?" Adrian shook his head. "I won't let it. The pilot is separate from the merger issues. But I worry the negative press might overshadow our progress." He paused, gaze drifting to the window. "Also, I worry about you. If these rumors link your name to mine, you could face undue scrutiny or harassment. It's not fair." Her heart squeezed, seeing how genuinely he cared. She found her voice a bit shaky. "I can handle it. Honestly, your faith in my work has been everything. I'm not going to let anyone push me out or spin it into something it isn't." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. He looked at her with deep gratitude. "Thank you, Emma. That means more to me than you know." A hush stretched between them, charged with unspoken feelings. He seemed on the verge of saying something else, but hesitated. Instead, he inhaled and shifted back into a more businesslike tone. "Anyway, I wanted to warn you that the next few weeks might bring more media inquiries or internal tension. Just keep your guard up. If anyone from outside corners you for a quote, contact PR." Emma nodded. "I will. And Adrian," she wet her lips, summoning courage, "if there's anything I can do, organizing documents, cross-referencing statements, please tell me. I'm good at sorting through data, even if it's not about departmental processes." His eyes softened. "I appreciate the offer. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But if I need a second pair of eyes, I'll remember you said so." She rose, taking that as a cue the conversation was nearly over. He stood as well, walking her to the door. Before she left, he gently touched her elbow, a gesture of sincere connection. "Emma, thank you. For listening, for being here after hours, for everything." She looked up, meeting his gaze. Under the muted overhead light, she caught the tired vulnerability in his face. "I'm just glad you trust me," she whispered. "Let me know if you need anything more." He nodded, letting his hand drop. "I will. Have a safe trip home." She stepped into the hallway, the door closing quietly behind her. The office lights had dimmed further, and the hush felt heavier than usual. In the elevator ride down, Emma replayed his words. A possible lawsuit, media sniffing for scandal, the complex business matters overshadowing the normal flow of corporate success. And in the midst of it, they'd formed a bond that extended beyond spreadsheets and pilot programs, an understanding that if either faced pressure, they wouldn't be alone. Once on the street, she drew in the cool evening air. Her phone buzzed with a group chat notification, Melanie and a few co-workers discussing weekend plans. She stared at it, wondering if she had the emotional bandwidth to socialize. She felt drained. The reality that her rising star at the company might place her in the crosshairs of rumor and legal drama weighed on her. Yet she also felt an odd resoluteness. As long as Adrian needed her help, and as long as her contributions made a genuine difference, she wasn't about to back down. The synergy they'd built was undeniable. Even if it was overshadowed by outside noise, that synergy felt precious and worth defending. Walking to her bus stop, Emma gazed up at the tall outlines of skyscrapers. She told herself that no matter how intense things got, she would remain professional, keep delivering results, and not let idle gossip tarnish what she had achieved. She'd continue forging her path, and she sensed Adrian would be navigating his own challenges with equal determination. All the same, an undercurrent of longing ran beneath her convictions. How much longer could they tread the line between cautious support and something deeper, something far more perilous in a corporate environment? Neither of them had an answer yet. But with the ground shifting beneath them, Emma suspected that the question couldn't remain unanswered forever. The weekend arrived, offering Emma a brief respite from the hectic pace at the office. She spent Saturday morning doing something she rarely had time for anymore, indulging in a quiet stroll through the city's art district. A local craft fair filled the sidewalks with vibrant booths. She meandered past paintings, hand-woven textiles, and avant-garde sculptures made from reclaimed metal. The creative energy reminded her of who she was before the corporate whirlwind, someone who loved finding small pockets of inspiration in everyday life. Later, as she sipped iced tea on a bench, she thought about Adrian's mention of enjoying modern art. She pictured him here among the paintings, quietly analyzing patterns. It brought a wistful smile to her face. She chided herself for letting her mind drift into personal territory, but the memory of his tired eyes and the strain in his voice when he confessed his worries tugged at her heart. On Sunday, she resolved to finalize some notes for the upcoming expansion of the software pilot, ensuring Monday morning would start smoothly. She woke early, brewed coffee, and opened her laptop at her small kitchen table. A list of departmental heads scrolled by as she typed up a Phase 2 schedule. Occasionally her gaze flicked to her phone, half hoping for some message from Adrian, perhaps an update on the legal troubles or simply a casual check-in. But the device remained silent. By late afternoon, she forced herself to close the laptop. She needed balance. She called Melanie to meet for an early dinner at a cozy bistro not far from her apartment. Over rosemary bread and warm soup, Melanie gave Emma a sympathetic once-over. "You look exhausted, Em. Work's been that intense?" she asked. Emma shrugged. "It's not just the work. There's a bunch of external pressures on Mr. Lockhart, so I'm bracing for fallout if things go public. Some journalists sniffing around for a story, tying my name to his." Melanie's eyes widened. "That's bold. Reporters love drama. Are you worried?" "A bit." Emma fiddled with her spoon. "I'd hate for the pilot program to be overshadowed by some scandal, and I don't want to be misrepresented in the media as some starry-eyed staffer with personal motives. I'm proud of what we've accomplished." Melanie reached across the small table, giving Emma's hand a supportive squeeze. "You're genuine and hard-working. Don't let rumors rob you of that truth. Besides, Mr. Lockhart knows the real story. And so do you. That counts for something." Emma sighed, nodding. She felt a wave of gratitude for Melanie's grounded reassurance. "Thanks, I needed that." Monday morning dawned crisp and bright. Emma arrived at the office armed with her fresh Phase 2 plan. She breezed through her emails, handling new sign-up requests from 2 more departments eager to adopt the pilot software. After a quick meeting with marketing to resolve a file-sharing glitch, she headed toward Adrian's office to deliver a concise progress report. She wanted to show him that despite the looming legal tension, things were moving smoothly on her end. Miss Santos greeted her with a subdued smile. "He's in there, but he might be on a call. Let me check." A minute later, the door swung open. Adrian stood there, brow creased. The tall woman, his special counsel, exited the office, portfolio clutched to her side. She offered Emma a polite but guarded nod, then continued down the hallway. Adrian met Emma's gaze with a weary flicker of a smile. "Morning," he said. "Come in." She stepped inside, noticing how dim the office felt despite the sunlight outside. Adrian closed the door, gesturing for her to join him near the windows. He leaned against the sill, arms crossed. "How was your weekend?" Emma's heart skipped at the personal question. "Peaceful, mostly. Got some rest, saw a bit of the craft fair downtown." His lips quirked faintly. as if imagining her amid the colorful stalls. Sounds nice. Wish I'd had that kind of weekend. She noted the shadows under his eyes again. Things still rough? He inhaled, gaze drifting over the skyline. Yes. The settlement discussions have stalled. The other side wants a public hearing to push for a bigger payout. My counsel's trying to negotiate, but he exhaled heavily. It's messy. Emma's chest clenched at the stress he radiated. I'm sorry, that must be draining. Is there anything I can do? He shook his head gently. You're doing enough. The best help is keeping the company's positive momentum. Show the world we're not crumbling under pressure. Emma held up a small binder of neatly printed pages. Speaking of momentum, I wanted to hand you this. Phase 2 plan. We can potentially bring in 2 more departments next week if marketing's metrics remain strong. Adrian accepted the binder, flipping through pages. She saw relief glimmer in his eyes, as if grateful for something tangible and hopeful to focus on. This is perfect, he murmured. You've laid it out clearly, timelines, training schedules, metrics. She nodded. It'll require more training sessions, but I have volunteers, and I can handle at least 2 sessions a week. He lifted his gaze to hers. Emma, I hope you know how much of an impact you've made here. Regardless of any external noise, this initiative is a game changer for us. Her pulse gave a traitorous thump. She mustered a calm smile. I'm grateful you believed in me. A few months ago, I was just a new secretary trying not to get lost. Adrian's expression softened. And now you're shaping the way multiple departments collaborate. I'm proud of you. The intensity in his voice made her blush. It also fanned the quiet yearning she tried so hard to bury. She lowered her gaze, clinging to professionalism. Thank you, she whispered. He set the binder on his desk, then cleared his throat, returning to a practical tone. Let's schedule a briefing with the department heads for Wednesday. We'll show them the next steps. Yes, sir, she said, aiming for a light, playful emphasis on sir to ease the tension. It worked. He huffed a small laugh. Before they could continue, Ms. Santos buzzed in. Mr. Lockhart, your next meeting is on standby. Adrian nodded, pressing the intercom. Thank you. Give me a minute. He then turned back to Emma, his face reluctantly shifting to executive mode. I'm sorry. I have to jump on a financial review call. She understood. No worries. I'll finalize those training materials. We can catch up later if needed. He escorted her to the door, a polite distance in his stance. I appreciate you, Emma, he said quietly as she stepped out. More than I can say right now. The soft admission lingered in her mind, buoying her through the rest of the morning. In the flurry of emails and departmental requests that followed, Emma felt oddly grounded. Even though trouble brewed at the highest levels of corporate politics, she clung to the knowledge that Adrian and she had forged trust, real trust. By midday on Wednesday, the boardroom buzzed with department heads, each claiming a seat at the expansive table. Emma stood near a projector screen, slides loaded and ready to detail Phase 2 of the pilot program. Adrian took his spot at the head, flanked by a few senior VPs. The atmosphere felt charged, but in a productive way. People murmured about expansions, praising the efficiency they'd seen so far. Emma launched into her presentation, walking through the timeline for each new department to onboard. She fielded a few pointed questions. Won't we risk data overlap? What if staff aren't fully trained? And deftly reassured them with solutions. Adrian occasionally interjected to reinforce her points, praising her methodical approach. By the meeting's end, the board members seemed impressed. Agreements were made for incremental rollouts. Emma mentally noted the next steps, feeling gratified that her plan was accepted with minimal pushback. Glancing at Adrian, she found him giving her a faint, approving smile. As the managers filed out, some patted Emma on the shoulder or thanked her for making this so seamless. She tried to keep a humble front, though inside she buzzed with pride. Finally, when most people had left, Adrian signaled Emma to wait. He moved closer, voice low. "That was outstanding. You've set the tone for a significant company-wide transformation." Emma felt warmth flood her cheeks. "It's all of us working together," she said, eyes shining with the excitement of success. Adrian looked about to reply when the boardroom door opened, revealing that same tall councilwoman. She paused, scanning the near-empty room, then locked eyes with Adrian. "We need to review the final documents for tomorrow's settlement meeting," she said, voice clipped. Adrian nodded, tension creeping into his posture again. "Right. Emma, we'll talk more later, okay?" Emma managed a quick smile, stepping aside as they walked out. She noticed a fleeting moment of eye contact with the woman. Her gaze was polite but inscrutable. Once they were gone, Emma exhaled, the triumphant moment marred by a reminder of the legal trouble closing in. Thursday came with a round of good news. The first official metrics showed the pilot saving hundreds of hours collectively in marketing tasks. Emma dashed into Adrian's office in the mid-morning, a glowing expression on her face. But Ms. Santos intercepted her before she could enter. "Mr. Lockhart isn't here," she explained calmly, though concern flickered in her eyes. "He left early for a meeting regarding the settlement. Said he'd be tied up all day." Emma's heart sank. "Oh, I see. Could I text him the results?" "Sure, he might appreciate it," Ms. Santos replied. "But I doubt he'll have time to respond. He seemed quite stressed." Emma nodded, stepping away with her file. A disquiet settled over her. She didn't want to intrude on Adrian's legal affairs, yet she worried for him. Through the day, she checked her phone, hoping for some sign of how the meeting went. None came. Finally, at nearly 7 p.m., when most staff had gone home, Emma's phone buzzed. She scrambled to unlock it, seeing it was a text from Adrian. Meeting took longer than expected. Settled, but not favorably. News might break soon. "Can you stay a bit at the office? Need to talk." Her pulse quickened. She replied immediately. "I'm here. We'll wait at my desk." In minutes, he arrived, stepping off the elevator looking drained. His tie hung loose, and the faint bruise-colored shadows under his eyes spoke volumes. Emma stood, heart twisting in concern. "Come on," Adrian said softly. "Let's use that conference room down the hall." They entered the small, dimly lit space. He closed the door, resting his palms on the table's edge. Emma faced him, waiting, searching his expression. He sighed. "We reached a settlement, which means no court trial, but it came at a steep price, and part of the agreement includes conditions about public statements. My counsel expects the press to latch on to any angle for a scandal, so—" He trailed off, meeting Emma's worried gaze. "They're advising me to keep a low profile, especially around anything they could label inappropriate fraternization. They caught wind of certain rumors about you and me." Emma's throat tightened. "I'm sorry," she whispered, eyes downcast. "I never wanted our work relationship to cause you issues." He shook his head, stepping closer. "This isn't your fault. The media will twist anything, but my team fears if the media sees us together, like at lunches or these late meetings, they might use it to paint a salacious story." He hesitated, regret filling his features. "Emma, I have to be cautious, for both our sakes." Her chest constricted. She heard what he wasn't quite saying, that they might need to create distance to avoid fueling speculation. "Right," she said thickly, keeping her tone steady. "That makes sense." He raked a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "We've done nothing wrong, yet these vultures can harm reputations. I hate letting rumors dictate my actions, but I can't jeopardize the company or you." She managed a sad smile. "I understand. We'll keep our interactions strictly professional. No more private lunches, no more after-hours meetings unless absolutely necessary." His expression was pained. "Yes," he murmured. "At least until this storm blows over, I don't want you to be targeted." A heavy silence filled the room. Emma felt a swirl of disappointment, though she knew it was logical. "Our pilot program? It continues," he said firmly. "I'll still support you wholeheartedly, but we'll maintain a careful distance publicly. Let departmental leads handle more direct check-ins, so it doesn't look like favoritism." She swallowed the lump in her throat. It was the right call. Anything else would add fuel to the rumor mill. "All right," she said, voice subdued. His gaze locked onto hers, raw emotion flickering there. "I'm sorry, Emma," he repeated softly. "I never wanted you to get caught in corporate crossfire. You deserve better." She mustered courage, resting her hand lightly on the edge of the table near his. "You've given me a chance to excel. Whatever comes, I won't regret working with you." For a moment it seemed he might take her hand, but he held back, clenching his fist against the table. "Thank you," he whispered. Then he cleared his throat, drawing away. "Let's call it a night. I'll have Ms. Santos manage any direct updates. If you need me, email or text, but keep it minimal and strictly business." "Understood," Emma said, her heart aching at the sudden formality. He opened the door for her, and they walked out together into the dim hallway. At the elevator, they exchanged a final look, an acknowledgement of the closeness they'd shared, now forced to retreat behind professional boundaries. The elevator doors slid open. She stepped inside, resisting the urge to say something comforting or personal. His gaze lingered until the doors closed, a silent farewell to the unguarded connection they'd carefully nurtured. When she reached the lobby, the starkness of the situation hit her. She'd grown used to Adrian's presence, the synergy and sparks of warmth that felt so natural despite the corporate setting. Now they had to muzzle that closeness for the sake of optics. She reminded herself that the pilot program she led was a triumph, that she would keep improving processes and forging her career path. Yet the sadness in her chest refused to be ignored. Stepping out into the cool night air, Emma drew a trembling breath. Maybe this was temporary. Maybe once the settlement chaos faded, they'd go back to something gentler. But she couldn't shake the gut feeling that the damage was already done. Even if they emerged from this storm intact, they might forever carry the memory of how rumors, legal pressures, and corporate politics forced them to deny a connection they both felt growing every day. She began walking toward the bus stop, hugging her coat closer. In the neon-lit city street, she reminded herself of her accomplishments, of the respect she'd earned from managers and colleagues. She told herself that her career was on a strong track. But as she boarded the bus and took a solitary seat by the window, her thoughts circled back to Adrian, the man who believed in her, who saw beyond her title and recognized her talents, and who, in another reality free of corporate entanglements, might have played a far different role in her life. For now, they would be CEO and staffer, strictly business. Yet in Emma's heart, a persistent ache told her this wasn't the end of their story, only a chapter where they stepped back to protect everything else they'd fought so hard to achieve. And though she tried to